Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Max and Bob just walked in, so I'll let everybody peruse the meeting minutes if you haven't done so already. There's actually 2 meeting minutes. So the meeting minutes from November 18th. If anybody can remember back that far.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. January 21st. That was our last meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Public comments? No public comment. Program of projects update. We sent that out, and has everybody looked at it? Okay. It's out there, so I sent it out. I sent it out last week, so it was with the meeting, with all of the, and it was a spreadsheet too, so I was able to, it was all ready to go, so I sent it out then, or I had to send it out then.
There was a link on the meeting page on yours.
So, not a lot of changes. The big things I wanted, everybody to look at is at the bottom. That's always the summary. Is always the important part. So you can see what we had. We had 1.1 million left over in 2026. So that will go towards transit. We tried to use it. We tried our best to use it, and the timing didn't work. So it kind of puts us in a bind in 2027. I do have a couple options. I'm going to try working on those options to mitigate that, because in 2028 we do have some funds. So I will be working on that, and we'll talk about that later on in the meeting. Hey, programming timelines. Make sure everybody please sign in. Do we want to do introductions? Everybody knows everybody. Okay. Let's go ahead and do introductions. We should have done this in the beginning, but we have more people here now. So, my name is Charles Bradsky, NERC, and I manage all these transportation projects.
Candace Eklund, NERC.
And Mike, not NERC.
Mark Waddell, Todd Tashford.
Ryan Lissig, Director in Indiana. George Topple, New Township Trustee.
Jeff Sherrill.
Team Button Hammond.
Hashem, City India for Chicago.
Martin Bobchick, Porter County. Bob Thompson, Valparaiso.
Max Raylander, Valparaiso.
Barry Stillwell, NERC. Tricia McKeon, DLZ.
Jake Damaro, Butler, Herman, and Cypher.
Jenna Aguilar, Lake County Highway.
Jill D. Tommaso, Lockman Group.
Tim Hollinsworth, VS Engineering.
Tom Vanderwood.
Okay, thank you. The real meat of today's meeting I wanted to get into is the funding and programming timelines. As we all know, or as we should know, that on May 1st, roughly every year, NDOT closes their books at 10 a.m. So we pretty much have to have all of our funds obligated by then. And we tried our darndest to obligate all those funds. And this year we fell short. So so afterwards we had a meeting, Brianne and Ann and I had a meeting, kind of to look at lessons learned. So NDOT LPA contracts, I'm sure all of you know this, or if you don't, it's like part of the class that you have to take. But per the ITAP guidelines, you must have, for an NDOT LPA contract, it must be approved by the LPA and NDOT. I mean, that's something new, that's pretty much straightforward. The approval timeline for the LPA is whatever your timeline is. I mean, I imagine your contracts need to go before Board of Works or somebody like that. The town council, the city council, something like that. So keep that in mind when we're looking at your LPA contracts, your NDOT LPA contract, because we have no say over that. So the approval for the NDOT side of it usually takes about 15 days, 2 weeks. And it can go anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks. So that's from June to February. However, the busy time of the year, March to May, that can be around 30 days. So usually it's 15 to 30 days. It has gone as much as 35, but that's when things are really backing up, and that's usually towards the end of getting towards the end of April. And then after May 1st, it's just whenever things clear up. So we are saying now that we have to get contracts, your NDOT LPA contracts, into NDOT by March 15th. That gives us time to submit a FEMAS request, and the FEMAS request only requires a few hours, or a couple days, I should say, a few days. But we can't get that FEMAS request unless you have an approved NDOT LPA contract. So, and then lastly, any request for additional funds, you need to have an amended contract. Again, that's not new, but it's something that kind of slips behind, kind of slips down there. We forget about it. Your consultant team they need some more, they would like some more money for whatever reason, because they've got to do some additional work for whatever the reason is. So that amended contract, and if we have the money, we'd love to give it to you, but you have to have an amended contract, an amended NDOT LPA contract. So keep that in mind. And usually I start asking in February, January, February, hey, if you guys need more money, let me know. So generally in December, I have a good idea of how much money I'm gonna have left over. But until things are finalized and that I have to keep money aside for any contracts that are letting. But generally, if you are requesting additional funds, let me know in December-ish. And I'd be more than happy we can talk about it then. But it does need an approved amendment to your NDOT LPA contract. Again, it's got to go back to March 15th, that date. We tried to get some projects, some additional funds for PE or or right away. And we just fell short because, we fell flat because there wasn't an amendment for those additional funds. So just something to keep in mind on your NDOT LPA contracts. Now, tip amendments. So this is approval of projects or phases with significant funds. We're adding adding a phase. So looking at the timeline, we have the Transportation Committee. Okay, that's a week and a half. It's 2 weeks before the commission meeting, the first Tuesday of the month. So you go back 7 days, because everything has to be turned in on my end, 7 days before the Transportation Committee. We'd like it more, but this is really getting into the kind of the minimums right here. Plus there's 21 days of public comment. Plus there's 7 days for ICG, which is the Intergovernmental Consultation Group. And they do technical comments or technical review of the amendment. So there's 35 days. Plus if we have 5 days in there for float, we're at 40 days before the Transportation Committee. So we're going back more than a month before that we have to have everything in for an amendment. And then here's the one thing that we're watching this, NDOT and federal highway approval and included in the STIP before those funds can be requested and approved. Takes 90 to 105 days. The February amendment that we submitted still has not been approved. I kind of expected it anytime because now it is pushing the 90 days since we put it in. Actually, last week was 90 days. So I'm kind of expecting it any time. But just keeping that in mind, so the total time for these amendments is 5 months. So really, there is no such thing as a quick. And emergency amendments, yeah, if we want to do an emergency amendment, and according to our tip now, it describes what an emergency amendment is. An emergency amendment is one of two things. One, safety is involved. The classic example is a bridge strike and they need to fix a bridge. Or if we have loss of funds. But then again, going to NDOT, what constitutes an emergency for you does not constitute an emergency for me. So our emergency amendment we submitted on March 12th is still not been approved yet. So it's still 90 to 105 days. It used to be in the past where you could submit an emergency amendment sometime before April 15th and it would get approved. That has not been the case the last 2 years. So I'm going with that's not going to be the case going forward. So we're going to say that tip amendments must be submitted to NDOT by February 1st. So we could do a January amendment, but I'd really like to have things in January. So which means everything's to get it for the February or the January amendment. We have to have things in by Thanksgiving. Just keep that in mind. So, and any tip amendments would have to close by January 15th. So if we don't get it in by Thanksgiving, the regular amendment, we could always put it into an emergency amendment, and we would have two amendments in January, an emergency amendment as well as the regular tip amendment. And basically the emergency amendment just cuts out the public comment period. I still have to send the emergency amendment to the ICG for their review. So we do have 7 days before that, but anyway. So in conclusion, in general, at NERC and NDOT, we want to help everybody, and everybody knows we do. Everybody knows what kind of asset we have with Brianne and Marcy, and they'll work with us. I've said before, they're great ladies, just don't go to them at the 11 o'clock hour because someone else is already at the 11 o'clock hour, and they're working on that. And plus, they have all their other work that they need to do. So, but we have to, everybody has to own the process. It's not, well, I got it into NDOT, or I got it into NERC. We've got to be all proactive on getting this going sooner than later. Projects and phases must be in the current TIP to receive additional funds. It used to be if a project had that phase, if you had PE in a phase, then we could add more money to it. But Federal Highway has kind of looked at it black and white, more black and white now than they have in the past. So when they say it has to be in the TIP, it has to be in the current TIP, which could be burdensome on even number of years when we have a brand new TIP. It's just something we need to keep in mind. So having projects led in Q3 or Q4 hinders our ability to obligate funds, to know what we have left over for funds. I know some of you are pretty good about not letting projects let in Q3 or Q4, but we've noticed with the schedules being crazy, especially with the NEPA and the right-of-way, things are just really dragging out. I think John Krugerberg, project manager, said that the NEPA is taking like almost 18 months. So we've got to factor in that those additional year or whatever. If Federal Highway, actually Indiana Division, Federal Highway, does not have someone that can review NEPA documents. So currently, and I don't know if they're advertising for that position or not, but currently, anything that needs Federal Highway review is going to another state. I don't know how many states do not have someone that can do environmental reviews, but if there's another state that doesn't have that ability, then they're shipping it to another state too. So, and plus they don't know our forms. They don't know the NDOT forms. They don't know the way the NEPA document. It's not a standard. It is a standard form, but where everything is placed can be different from state to state. So when they look at it, they have no familiarity with the project, especially a bigger project like, say, the Willow Creek Corridor or the Kennedy Avenue, some of those bigger projects. Our federal partners may have some familiarity with those, but the other states don't. So they're kind of looking at a fresh set of eyes. And we don't know who's going to be reviewing it or what they're looking for. So, but like I was saying, like I have here, if we can move, we need to move projects into Q1 and 2. And then that way, if the project, if the schedule slips, then we can move it to 3 or 4. But I've noticed in the past that bid prices are not that much better. We've always said that we'd like to, I know you've heard that if we let it in February or March, we can get better bid prices. But what I noticed is the bid prices, from, from the inflation calculator that I use, the bid prices are maybe 1% different, higher in the fall, and I'm covering 80% of that. So, and we have less risk, so something to keep in mind. So essentially, like I said, we cannot get additional funds last minute, or you cannot get funds last minute. Last minute anymore is January for May deadline. So, and so therefore we have to stay on top. We can't get behind anymore. And just keep in mind, these are your projects. The success of the projects belongs to all of us. We all need to work together. But ultimately, if the project doesn't make a letting in a certain year, my only option is to move it out to the end of the TIP, into that 5th year. So if something cannot make it, and I had a project earlier this year that couldn't make it, and I told them the only thing I could do was, actually it was in 25 that couldn't make it, and the only thing we did, we put it out to 2030. And they had to go tell the mayor that their project that it slipped, and it had to go to 2030. Now I was able to move it up, because we received some additional funds, and starting in 27, I was able to move it up to 27. But we got lucky, and actually there's some value engineering going on in that project too, because I didn't have all the funds that they need. So, like I said, they're your projects. We all need to take ownership of it and be cognizant of the January, February timeline and put more pressure, because we got to get things approved in that time. And if there's an NDOT LPA agreement that NERC doesn't have any say in, it needs to get into NDOT if we want to use those funds. After May 1st, the only thing that we can do with those funds is we can flex those to transit. And then again, we can only flex it to transit if transit has a project. So I just can't give it to one of our transit agencies, but they have to have a project. It could be in a future year, but we could give it to them, but they have to have a project. We just can't say we're going to give it to this company for this bus agency for fencing in a parking lot if it's not already in the TIP. So Stephen and Ann are working on all the transit, making sure that they have projects in the future that we could put money towards. But it still has to be a project that's in the TIP. Yes, Chris?
What's the good news?
The good news?
66 days to go.
You don't have to worry about this much.
Yeah.
That's the good news. Chris is retiring soon, so
I am.
he and Denny are going to be off and fishing somewhere, I bet. That's the good news.
There we are.
So, any other questions or just something to keep in mind that these timelines? And we all need to keep in mind these timelines too. So, it's just things are taking longer and longer and especially at the state level where, you know, if someone retires, then they don't replace that person. So, unless, or it's taking longer and longer to replace that person, so. And the person may come in and have the person that's replacing may have a different idea, which is what we had at Federal Highway. So. Anything? Again. Okay. Any other new business? Okay, moving on to 6, the NOFA update. We're still planning on having a NOFA this fall. It looks like it's going to be an almost normal NOFA, so we do, 31's gonna be a little bit smaller, but a little bit smaller, but for the most part, 32 is gonna be good, or we can move those around or something like that. The big thing I have been telling everybody that the participation at NERC meetings is gonna be a question on the NOFA. So it'll be 8 points. So the whole idea, and we're talking about that internally, so the whole idea is that it could make a good project great, a bad project good, or a not so good project good. But it's not going to be, it could be one of those things where you could just bump you above the next another project. So something to keep in mind. Everything else is pretty much it's gonna be pretty much the same. So on the NOFA, I think we've nailed it down and got rid of all the questions that people were either not getting any points or were getting all the points for. So now we've talked internally, Tom and I had a meeting on it. We kind of went over some of the questions and some of the rules. I did send out last week to all of the staff members the applications, so they're looking at their applications. So Iman is looking at planning and the TOD projects, or the applications, and making any comments that she wants to have on those. Scott's looking at new roadways and roadway modifications. Mitch is, of course, looking at complete streets and trails. Kathy's looking at air quality and environmental. I think that's all of them. So once we get their comments back, we'll probably have a meeting all together and talk about that and how we should do all those. And then we'll probably come to a TROC meeting. Probably make it a TROC meeting and discuss it then. So that's where that is. Next up, Operation Roadwise by LTAP. There's a flyer on the side. This is kind of NDOT is putting these on, or LTAP is putting these on for NDOT. I'm going to the one in Plymouth. If anybody wants, give me a holler and we can carpool. Who knows? But if you want, there is one on June 9th in West Lafayette, or June 23rd in Plymouth. If you want, you can go to Odon or you can go to Columbia City if you want to take a nice little trip. It's a one-day seminar. So Columbus is pretty.
What's the start time?
What's that?
Start time?
8:30. So all those will be Eastern time, so 7:30 our time. And I think they get out at like 3 or 3:30 or something like that. So just keep in mind, it's just kind of a safety oriented, so they'll be talking about different things. AASHTO safety software is coming out this fall. A lot of states already use AASHTO safety software. And NDOT is making the transition over to it. So Road Hat is going away. So everything that you know about Road Hat is gonna be gone. They're retiring it along with Chris. So
How's that old?
the big thing is they're trying to incorporate, because everybody uses ICC and ICF. So you're still gonna be able to get ICC and ICF. And they have to incorporate how AASHTO safety software spits those numbers out. So we'll still get ICC and ICF. But I wanna say 13 or 14 states already use the AASHTO safety software. So you're welcome to go on YouTube and Google it and see their training videos if you really want to geek out and go into it and take a deep dive into it. Chris, maybe that's something you could do.
In my spare time.
But just be aware that there's going to be a new safety software coming out that we'll be looking at. So probably starting in 2027, calendar year 2027, you'll be looking at that. And I'm sure that maybe there'll be a big thing at road school, and there may be, they might have training sessions to look at that. So something to keep in mind. And then lastly, last week I received something. There is a railroad grade crossing fund, NOFA, this year that's being, applications are due by July 10th. So if you have a railroad crossing that you would like to have new, if it's like unmarked, or not unmarked, but with no arms, unsignalized, and you would like that, you can submit an application for that. I don't know. For more information, there's a program overview and application. If you, I would receive this in the email, so I imagine most of you already did too. So something to keep in mind. Another opportunity to work on some railroad crossings. Nothing like the local tracks, but hopefully end up maybe bring that some back. But this is just something low cost. If you need new crossbucks and new paint, that's part of it too. So on an unsignalized. Is there anything else that anybody would like to talk about? Okay. Thank you, everybody. It was a quick meeting. One last thing on the agenda before we quit. The next TROC meeting is August 25th, 2026. We may do one earlier for the NOFA, just to kind of bring that out to everybody, let everybody kind of see what it's going to be. And that would not be a TROC meeting, that would just be like a working group. So The date for the November meeting has not been set. I believe that's right around Thanksgiving. So, any thoughts on that? Tuesday of Thanksgiving week? So that would be the 24th? Is that, I mean, does everybody feel like that's a good date? The Tuesday of Thanksgiving week? Yes?
Sure.
Sure?
I'll be here.
Okay. Okay,
November 24th.
yes. We'll also talk about it in August, make sure that it's still doable then. Anything else? So we'll adjourn then. Thank you, everybody.